Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow Podcast. We are so happy that you're here. I'm Ashley, the host of the monthly grain segment of the podcast, brought to you by the Landis Grow Solutions Center. Today we have a really exciting guest to chat about managing risk with grain marketing during the future, market fluctuations, and how really just crop insurance plays into this marketing, as a tool. So today I have Scott Stoller on with me. Scott is from Illinois. Scott is the founder of Stoller Grain Solutions, and Stoller Grain Solutions assists ag perspective consulting clients in really finding the best outlets for their grain and presenting their grain for sale to the end user. So, Scott, I teed that up for you.
Nice.
That's off your website. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And tell us more about your journey, in agriculture, how you got here, and more about what you do.
Absolutely. So, thanks for having me, first of all.
Yeah.
I grew up in central Illinois, a little town called Fairbury, grain and livestock farm. Dad was a Mormon's feed dealer for 35 years, and we also had about 400 head of feeder pigs the hard way in barns. College through Illinois State, and worked for ADM for 3.5 years out of college, and then got me to Northern Illinois, get closer to my wife's family, and ran a country elevator business there for 10.5 years, and then started a brand new off the farm grain business about 10.5 years ago. And then 2 years ago, my wife and I took the journey to buy that part of the business out. And so, yeah, it's been fun. Have a great partnership with Landis, and really looking forward to what the next couple of years are going to bring.
Yeah. Well, that was very quick, and I appreciate you being here today, obviously driving in from Illinois. And we're excited. Landis has had the opportunity over the last few years, right, to work and partner with different businesses, people like you, optimization partners. And we're excited just to have you here because of all of that.
Yeah.
So before we dive in, it's that time of the year. How is planting looking kind of out your way? What are guys thinking?
Well, let's start with, we're going to talk crop insurance a little bit, but we had our first replant claim on Monday.
Okay.
So that means we had a little too frosty, over the weekend, and some beans just didn't quite make it. So you get in that Peoria, Illinois area, there's a lot of beans in the ground.
Gotcha.
To the tune of 70, 80, 90%. I'd say a lot of the larger growers in that same market will be done planting corn this week.
Okay.
It's flat, it's black. You guys can go in a hurry. It's so it's going to be there'll be a lot in the ground. Of course, we got some cool temperatures. How are they going to like? How's expensive corn going to like
39 degrees.
Yeah, that's probably not going to be overly good. But guys, you just start looking at the calendar, and it's like, okay, it's about go time here. So, but beans are the ones that are probably more realistically could get a little touched with frost here this week. Get beyond this week once again. Calendar says let's go.
Exactly, but it's crazy. I was just chatting with some farmers, and I'm like, the nightly lows are like 39 degrees for the next 2 weeks, which is just kind of nuts. But like you said, the calendar says we go. So
well, I saw a guy every day outside of my neck of the woods in my back door that is putting a thermometer in the ground, and every day it keeps saying 40. It's like, it can't be good.
Yeah, we need some heat.
Yes.
Okay, well, diving in, this is obviously the grain segment of the podcast, and I want to chat about a little bit what's going on in the markets, because that's obviously what you and I love to do, right, every day working with customers. And things are a little messy, I would say, right now.
There's a little carnage.
There's a little carnage. So I just want to think about, this podcast obviously gets listened to by people in agribusiness, but for sure our producer members, right? And so I just want to give them a little bit of what's going on. Obviously know that as we record this today, this is the information, right? And so as we record this, we just talked about planting progress. We've been seeing the weekly crop report progress. We're, saying that we are above average on corn and soybeans, which is probably agreeable to your point and to my point. But I mean, it just seems wild, seems early. So, I think we're digesting that news, which is definitely not bullish for the market as far as the farmer standpoint go. And then one thing I definitely want to mention and maybe chat a little bit about is, we saw a large corn export sale canceled yesterday from China. Obviously not bullish for the farmer either. So yesterday was kind of a doomsday day on the board, right?
Well, and actually in the market reacted fairly well by the close. So you that's good.
It is.
At the end of the day, though, we've spent really 2 years at some fairly high profitability levels if a guy had an average yield. Now I know in the western part of the territory, southwestern part of the territory, not necessarily as good of a crop as the rest of the state. I get that and feel for those guys. But, eastern Iowa, most of the state of Illinois, most of the state of Indiana, most of Ohio had really towards record of a crop.
Yeah.
And so what's left out there is anytime we touch above 650 cash corn, I would love, everyone wants 7, everyone wants 750, everyone wants a magical number. At the end of the day, if we can sit back and go, hey, you know what, it's 650 and I had 210 bushel anchor, 190, whatever your APH is, and you go, you know what, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I make really good money.
Yeah.
And then so you go, I'm out. And you go, yeah, I can be comfortable with that. And that's tough to do, though, because, you get to this time of the year and it's like, okay, June, July, we got that normal weather rally that would happen. Well, you've got last year's crop to sell. You got next year's crop to sell that's going in the ground right now or is in the ground.
Yeah.
And you got 24 that input prices are going to be available probably in 2 months.
For sure.
And so you got to go, okay, it's really hard to think about the 23 crop when you got the 22 crop on your mind.
Yeah.
So at some point in time, you got to get on the other side of the bushel.
You do.
So.
Yeah. And I mean, from your area standpoint, right, one thing we talk about here a lot is farmer receipts.
Yeah.
And commercial receipts. But for this podcast, let's focus on farmer receipts. Feels like a lot of my customers are like at their bin bottoms. Would that be the same in your area?
Yeah, you've got a huge, and so I cover Illinois, but I also have a grain dealer's license in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of all the way to the Ohio border. And this year, Illinois corn is getting yanked your direction. It's all coming west. Those BN shuttle shippers that Landis has, they're reaching into Illinois and grabbing stuff too. Yeah. And it's been consistent. I remember talking to one rail loader at the Grain and Feed Association meeting. We had dinner back in the end of February, and he goes, we're averaging 12 trains a month. Yeah. He goes, every other day we're loading a train.
That's so cool, though.
But that's 400,000 bushel a clip, leaving the door, leaving.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would concur in Illinois, we're going to be pretty thin.
Yeah.
You get around that river market, and that's the reason why you see these inversions doing some stupid things right now. There's not a whole lot of movable stock on that river system. Mm-hmm. Now you go to Indiana, different ballgame. Yeah. Southern Michigan, different ballgame. There is a lot of stock there.
Really? So what's driving that? I mean,
one of their largest corn crops ever.
Okay.
And one of their largest bean crops ever.
Okay.
They could generate the cash flow in beans at harvest. And so they generated that. Beans moved early. The commercial bought early. Your processors, your bungies, they were a big buyer at harvest with huge length in their position. Okay. And then you got to post-harvest and the country elevators that took on, we had basis levels that fell 40, 50 cents in the middle of harvest just because the elevator had to drop their bid to try to create space. Yeah. Had one elevator, small elevator I sell to, he put, I think it was 4 or 5 tin cans worth of beans. Never has done that before.
That's crazy.
And it was in places it really didn't need to be.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of bushels there. Mm-hmm. And so they're flowing this way, but there's the carry out at the end of August will be in places that it hasn't been at least in 10 or 15 years.
Okay. And so with that, right, like let's talk about something that the farmer loves to talk about this time of year, which is basis, right? So the farmer continually every single day asks me, what do you think we're going to be paying basis-wise in July and August? Obviously, you and I don't know that. We can speculate and, gamble all we want on that. But, I think the point that I just continue to try to drive home with our farmers is it doesn't matter because you're not hedged, right? And so it's just like I feel like that's been my job lately is to have this push and pull with the farmer on risk management. I mean, yes, there's probably going to be huge potential for basis gains in most of Landis territory, but I loved our merchandiser gave a beautiful example the other day. And he said the Chicago Board of Trade dropped 8 cents on July futures. Meanwhile, a large end user moved their basis up 5 cents. You lost 3 cents.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, man, that is the story right now. So I mean, touch on that a little bit. I'm sure you'll fight it too.
So go back to the basics of what is basis. And so my mentor in the grain business was from Sandersville, Georgia, and big old Southern drawl. And it makes a lot more sense with the Southern drawl, but I'll use a pretty well Midwest twang of all basis does is moves grain from where it is to where it ain't. Mm-hmm. And that's all basis does. To get caught up in the minutia of what happens, you can't give the banker a basis. You can give the banker a cash check.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. So if you get to $7 by having $1 over basis and $6 on the board, great. If it's $8 and $1 under basis, still $7.
Still $7, yeah.
And so at the end of the day, what is that cash price going home? Mm-hmm. That's all it's going to matter. Now, there's opportunities to do some weird stuff. I get that. But there's also, once you get to a profitability level where you go, I'm making pharmaceutical type money from a return on investment standpoint, that's not normal. And it won't stay here because
it's so risky, right? I mean, there's so much risk right now, and it's always my reminder to my customers of like, okay, we are not supposed to be professional gamblers. Are you above break even? Probably. Yeah. Let's maybe take some more risk off. Unless you're like what I love to call bonus bushels, right? Yep. Then fair, you gamble away.
Well, I got a call from a grower in February. Awesome guy. He was in Florida, and he would be in his early mid-60s, and has done really well over the years. And he called me and goes, well, what do you think? I said, well, corn at your local market is still $6.90, and it's been $6.90 for a long time. I said it was $6.90 at harvest, it was $6.90 in December, and it's $6.90 today. And I said, what? He goes, what do you think? I'm like, it's still $6.90. And he goes, no, what do you think? I'm like, yeah, we got a chance for a run of some magnitude. I get it. I said, but let me put it this way: for easy math, at $7 corn, and I believe they had their yield this year was about 268, and so it's about $1,800 an acre gross. I said, have you ever grossed that much? He goes, never, ever. I'm like, okay. I said, if the market goes down $1, you lose $268 from what the board price is today. I said, that's like, what, $1,500 and some odd dollars, $1,530. He's like, yeah. I said, is that the most money you've ever made? Yeah. Okay. So I said, it doesn't matter what I tell you to do today. You're going to make money. If it goes back to $5.50, you're still going to make money. You had great yields. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, there's times where prices don't matter. And in some markets, this is that year. Yeah. It's weird. It is
weird, and I just think it's this like emotional, I want to get the best, right? Which we're all competitive.
We are, and I get it, and that's what we do we want to do that for a grower.
Exactly.
That each of them we work with, we want to make sure, and I get paid from a consulting standpoint to do that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, though, is as you sit down with a grower and go, what's our goal? Yeah. If our goal is to make a lot of money, it's not a goal because it's not attainable. Yeah. There's no such thing. Yeah. You're searching. You're just grasping at straws. But when you back up and go, okay, my goal is to make X amount. Perfect. Now we can put it in open order and go.
Exactly.
Let's do this, this, and this, and let's see if we can get it for you. And maybe we can do it through a basis contract, and then sell the futures later, or we can do an HTA and set the basis later. One way or the other. Yeah. Or just sell cash and be done.
Exactly. Okay, well, I hope our listeners enjoyed our marketing rant. But right, like you've got two merchandisers, originators here. Like this is what I live for. So
and let's back up. This is a 2-year issue, right? Or 2 or 3 year issue. Fast forward to 2023. It's not as pretty. You cannot you put cost of production down on paper and go, if you're a 225 to 250 yield type of person, you've probably in your land costs are $350 an acre. You've got $1,200 in this thing.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, I don't know about your guys' operation, but I am getting increasingly worried about the lack of interest in 2024 when it comes to decent Nove. And here I am just trying to poke a bear with 2024 when it comes to our customers. Yeah. and they somewhat laugh at me, right? Because the levels aren't where they are today. But it's a scary thought to think about that most of them aren't engaged, let alone, they aren't engaged in 2024, but they're really not engaged in 2023 in crop either, which is really scary.
We talked about this yesterday in a prep call. This is probably the least amount forward sold in the industry since coming out of the 2012.
Yeah.
And, that was a great farm income year for a lot of guys, and that was through crop insurance. Harvest prices were $7.90 or something like that, and gave guys a nice opportunity and some good checks from that. But for the 2014 crop, guys didn't sell the head. Mm-hmm. Well, if it's this, it's got to get to this. Well, it doesn't have to do anything. Yeah. And if you've got time and equity on your side, you can bear that.
Yeah.
But if you don't, and most guys have a lender to answer to at some point in time in their career, it makes it a little more difficult.
It does, and to your point, and then we're gonna move on. But I always love working with some of our producers that have been in this business for a long time.
Yep.
Right, and they're not making decisions actively, and I always just like to push this to them, right? Like, how would you be making decisions differently if you were still running an operating note, or if you were 26 just starting out? Well, I'd be way more aggressive. Should we be? Should we be? And so I always kind of love to float that back to them.
That's one that topic we could go on for hours.
Oh my gosh, we could. All right. Well, one of the main reasons why we brought you in, which I definitely want you to clarify some of this for us as well. But you obviously do a little bit of crop insurance on the side of you've got your license to really help producers make decisions. You don't actively sell, correct?
Correct.
But what a great tool for your, customers to have as a resource, right? You're able to answer questions for them.
Well, as from a standpoint, as we look at 23, as we look at 2024, and you go, what is the most advantageous and economical way to hedge the crop? Is really what it's about. And you can rewind back to August of last year. There was a product that was called margin protection. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of this in a little bit, but there's a product out there, and that's 16 months ahead of when your harvest is going to be for 23. And that product was available, and you could set a futures floor. And so is that a futures floor that matters? Well, it was somewhere with a deductible about $560 was the floor for 23. Now you're like, well, it's markets below that. That doesn't look half bad.
Yeah.
At the time, it's like, I want it to be $6 and that sort of thing. But so you find ways of, okay, how can we bring crop insurance and go, is it better just to sell grain? Is it better to have a crop insurance policy in place that gives you time? And that's a lot of what crop insurance can do. If you've got the right policy in your pocket, then you've got time where you can go, you know what, the market's at $550 today or sub $550. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden it goes to, and here's a great example. Go back to COVID, 2020. We went from somewhere February, March, we were at just shy of $4. Well, let's not talk about those numbers again, but just shy of $4. And we fell down to like $3.18, somewhere in that. And old crop was even cheaper than that, but new crop fell down to like $3.18. The guys we work with had crop insurance policies that had a floor at like $3.80. And so you're sitting back going, I don't have to sell anything in the midst of this.
Yeah. Just been protected.
And I can just let it go. And if we get back, their issue more so was what happens if we go from 318 back up to 380? I lose my indemnity payment. So is there a way to hedge that indemnity payment? Yeah. And so that's probably for another conversation, but that was a really cool opportunity to how you use your crop insurance as a floor, and gives guys an opportunity just to step back and go, everyone's freaking out about corn being sub 320. And we don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Well, and I think, one thing, and there, we probably have multiple avenues of producers here. But, I think about so many producers who would even have no idea that something like that exists. Yeah. They just know that they've got to go through the USDA to get crop insurance, and then they've, maybe are looking at a private program, right? But they have no idea really sometimes how to utilize it. I mean, it's just like I buy crop insurance because that's what we do.
Yeah.
So It's interesting, and I want to dive into some of this. So, you gave us kind of an overview. You talked a little bit about, right, how we use crop insurance as a marketing tool a bit. We chatted yesterday, as you mentioned, to prepare for this episode, and you said something that I really, really loved because from an origination standpoint, it was great. So you said the most economical way for the grower to hedge the crop is really by kind of looking at crop insurance.
Yeah, so you've got different avenues. You get, when you look at the segments of your business that you're going to create cash from, it's going to be through selling the cash grain. It's going to be by hedging the grain through crop insurance or protecting your floor with a crop insurance policy, or it's using futures and options, so a brokerage type account. Those are your three modes of protecting price. Crop insurance obviously protects yield as well if you're into a revenue protection RP type policy, and margin protection, same type of gig. But when you look at just a yield only type policy, that's yield, doesn't bring the price into it, so you get all this gamut of different federally subsidized products that most growers take. I think it's in the low 90s percentile of all growers across the U.S. take that. Side note, Canada, the Canadian government subsidizes up to 60%. So as you look around going, okay, I can get a federally subsidized product all the way to 95%. Now you're paying a lot between 80 and 95% too.
Yeah.
But Canada's only 60. And then there's private products above and beyond that.
Okay. That
are based solely on how good are you at growing the crop.
That's so interesting.
So that's
so crazy. And how do they justify that? Which is
and do we go that way someday?
Yeah.
It's I do everything I could to be a good steward of the soil, a good steward of my land, and I the number one overarching thing for growers in Canada, and I'm mainly talking corn, beans. I'm not in all the other crops, but for yields, when do they plant? If they get the corn and beans in the ground early, they will have good yields. That is the number one overarching indicator of how good of a grower are they.
Interesting.
And so down the road, do we get to that? You look at the sustainability side of what's coming.
Yeah, that's where my mind goes.
Yeah.
How do we tie sustainability in with,
Well, I think it's going to go there. It's just when and how. And is it does Landis a big part of that? And they are through some of the different relationships that Landis has. Yeah. But is it going to be through a federally subsidized product? Is it going to be a private product? What does that look like? Does it come in a cents per bushel? Does it come in dollars per acre? None. That's so unknown today.
Yeah, but it's a good point that we've got to be thinking about, right?
Yeah, and you guys want to be a lot of you look at I've been in the business for 24 years, I guess. And you kind of see the growers that maybe aren't the best agronomically. I got sorted out in the, call it 2004, 5, 6 type time period and prices were rough. 06, we had our first bump up to, I think it was in the 290s. And then it came back down until we got to 08 again with the ethanol boom. And that wave is really give guys the opportunity to stay in the business. But we're really getting to the point where you've culled a lot of the growers that maybe, weren't the best at being agronomically sound. And now we got really good growers that are agronomically sound.
For sure. Because you have to be.
And yeah, correct. And as we move forward, you look at this year's profitability for 23, it's going to, the potential to be so tight if we stay in that 550, $5.25 to $5.75 area. There's a lot of growers who won't make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you go, okay, how do they differentiate themselves from there? Well, do they have an off-the-farm job? Do they do tiling? Do they do something else? Or are they just really good at producing a crop? And if you're really good at producing a crop, then you got a good chance of winning.
Exactly. So one thing as an originator that I hear a lot, especially, kind of this time of the year, is, hey, I'm not selling new crop futures, right? Those values are, like we talked about, below my crop insurance value. And, I understand that that's a completely, totally valid point. Talk to me a little bit more. Is that truly as good as it sounds? Help us out. I want the producer just to be fully thinking, right?
Other than 4 times in the last 25 years, there's been an opportunity to have a crop insurance policy that is profitable right out of the gates. Other than that, it's not. So 70-80% of the time, you're not going to be profitable with where your price floor is. It's not meant to be that anyway, and really it shouldn't be, but it's not meant to be that way. So it's meant to be price protection. It's meant to be yield protection. Was at least the premise behind the crop insurance system, at least. And so you go, okay, if my futures floor, let's just use round numbers. So let's go, my futures floor is 550. If it's 545, well, the market, we as originators and merchandisers, we throw the term the market around a lot.
Yeah.
And the market, meaning the market makers, so hedge funds, index funds, commercials in the industry that they use as a hedging mechanism, unfortunately, probably don't really care where that break even is. And that's the tough part is we use the Board of Trade as just a hedging mechanism from our side of the industry, and same with the grower. And so by doing that, it really gives a grower an awesome opportunity, like the last 3 years. And then there's opportunities where you get, in a calendar year, you get 3 chances. And if you don't have it teed up and ready to sell in those 3 opportunities, it's going to be a tough year.
Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah. So that's, it's unfortunate. And so what do you tell a grower, I think was the original question. It's just know where you need to be to make money. And
really where your break even's at.
Yeah. And crop insurance, other than just providing a nice floor, that's all it really is to start with. Now you can trade around it, you can hedge around it, you can do a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, your paycheck comes from cash grain.
Yeah. Back to cash grain. It all circles back. So with crop insurance, right, I want to get into a little bit further of a rabbit hole.
Yep.
The farmer, right, obviously either has to choose ARC or PLC first with the USDA office to enroll in. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So we've got 2 options, and you chatted with me a little bit yesterday about the 2 options. Give us, you said we got to make sure that we talk about this for ARC and this for PLC.
Yep. So you look at, there is some really good county-based programs through the FSA to up your crop insurance level. And so if you take PLC, you have the opportunity to be involved in those programs. If you take ARC, you don't. So at the end of the day, PLC at least gives you that tool to go, you know what, I want to take an SCO type product, which is county based. You can take up to 86% and do some things like that. And that's the avenue that, some opportunities that some guys would take advantage of. And, I'll take a 70 or 75% revenue policy for myself, maybe units, an enterprise unit of your whole operation, or some optional units if you got some ground that's a little tougher in some different areas of the county, or different counties. You can do that too. But at the end of the day, it's, okay, if I can take that SCO product, you also have the ECO type product where you can take all the way to 95%. We've got a lot of growers that took it to 90% this year, and it was just a nice revenue floor at 90%. And so, but a lot of those programs are, you have to just know our PLC starts that decision process and goes from there. Around that same time in February and March is when the grower's making his spring crop insurance decisions as well. So March 15 close date for crop insurance. So it'd be the December or November futures in the month of February, the average of the month of February. And so you've got that to take too. And once again, the majority of the country takes a revenue policy for their own operation, not a county base, just their actual operation. To go a little deeper, the majority of Ag Perspective clients have a margin protection policy, which would be MP. The rationale behind, it's a federally subsidized product, 16 months of advance of harvest. So last September, our growers were buying this for the following 23 crop. And it's a very economical way to hedge the crop before you know much at all. So do I have nitrogen bought? Where's my seed cost going to be? A lot of that's known by September, should be. There's a lot of nitrogen lockdown. There's, you could have some dry fert on already if you got an early crop, but it's just making sure that, okay, would I rather sell futures? So corn at the time was about, I think in August, December 23, corn was at 630. So at 6:30, I could do that, or I could take a crop insurance policy that's going to be more than I normally pay for RP.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. It is definitely more, but you're protecting time, a lot of time, and you're giving yourself the opportunity to go, I can sit back and not have to do anything right now.
And like to your point, right? So many, or at least a handful of your really key agronomic inputs, which is huge.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, our role is to make sure we help our growers run their business. Yeah. And it's a family farm, and we always want it to be a family farm because that's really cool. Yeah. Landis does well with a family farm. Stoller Grain does well with that. Our agriculture runs really well around the family farm. Mm-hmm. But you still have to run it like a business.
You do.
And at the end of the day, if we can help our growers, whether you're a 600-acre grower or 6,000-acre grower or a 56,000-acre grower, it's just finding ways to make sure that that is a business at the end of the day that, maybe for tax purposes, you didn't make a whole lot of money, but for at the end of the day, you're a profitable year.
So you touched on something that I want to dive into next. You made the comment that, a lot of customers in Illinois are taking, maybe like a 90% revenue protection percentage, and it's lower typically here in Iowa. Why is that? Tell us more about that.
So a couple of the areas we work we're a little unicornish.
Okay, because I love that.
That is not the norm in Illinois by any stretch of the imagination. So growing up in central Illinois, it's RP. I mean, when on my farm that I had with my dad, I was the first customer of my uncles who sold crop insurance as well to take out an MP policy. They're like, can you tell us a little bit more about what this is? Why, you don't have anybody else doing it? No, we don't. And so, no, it's different. It's because, for the most part, we try to educate our growers once again. Is it economical? Is it the most economical way to hedge? And you go, if you would compare the price component of that margin protection insurance, or even ECO when you get to February and March, that component of the more often a claim hits between that 100% level down to that 90% level versus an 85 or a 75% policy for revenue protection, you're just not going to trigger a claim very often.
Gotcha.
And you're paying more for the product accordingly because of that. But just the actuarial tables, you're just not, it takes a really tough year. Yeah. And you don't want that anyway to get paid that way. So at the end of the day, it's okay. We want within our grower base, at least, and for Ag Perspectives clients in Illinois and Indiana, it's okay. Are you comfortable with this? Do you want that hedge in place? And some say yes, some say no, and that's part of it. But we just want to make sure that our growers are fully aware of what's available, and that's a lot of the issues. Selling crop insurance in September is really tough because the growers hit in the field.
Yeah, they're not engaged in that mode of business yet.
No, in a lot of agents, just that's not what their mindset is in that time of the year. And so this product came out, was it 19-ish, maybe 18, sometime in there. And so switching that mentality of having that sales close season at that time of the year, that one's pretty brutal.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right, well, kind of wrapping up here. Anything else you want to add to make sure that our listeners know about when it comes to, really using crop insurance as a marketing risk management tool?
One thing to keep in mind with crop insurance, you have in relation to options, like Board of Trade options, there is a put as part of that. So if the market goes down to $3, you do have a price floor, but also you have a call. So if it goes higher, if it goes to $8 like it did in 2013, you have that too. So you've got the optionality based in your crop insurance policy. When you see extreme moves, that's when you have the opportunity to use those versions of the put and the call inside that policy. Very few times do you see that big a move. Even what's funny, even you go back to history from 1990. Here's the gray in my beard. From 1990 through 2006. The average price move in the calendar year was 82 cents for corn, which seems like a lot because when you look back in prices, it seemed like you moved from $1.80 to $2.20. But no, it was 82 cents was the contract move. we're very rarely even seeing that today. And so we're probably going to go back to some semblance of volatility again someday. And when we do, is it 82 cents or do we widen that out to $1.30, something, just percentage wise? If that happens, that's where your policy then provides a really good floor. Blows the top off the ceiling because you got that opportunity up there.
Yeah.
So it's understanding how to use that and making sure you can go deeper. And a guy with a 75% policy, it's really covering a catastrophic type event.
Yeah.
It's not cat insurance, but it's covering a catastrophic type event. To lose 25% off the top, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. That
the grower doesn't want to give up because that's working capital.
Oh, for sure.
And so we don't want to see that. So it's finding a way to make sure and moving forward that the grower continues to see these other type of programs that are out there and available to them.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you. So much of this is above my head, which I love. I mean, it's why we wanted to bring you on to talk about this with our growers, because so many of us, in origination and our merchandising teams getting questions about this, right? So we wanted to bring you on. But I want to go ahead and thank our listeners for joining us today. And obviously, thank you, Scott, for joining us. To our listeners, be sure to subscribe so that you don't ever miss one of our episodes and you stay up to date on the podcast.